Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our remote meeting of Area Planning Committee North. I am Councillor Ivan Jewell, Chair of the committee. Please note that the meeting is being streamed live through the council website and will be available for viewing for a minimum of 6 months. I would like to give a warm welcome to members, officers, and any member of the public or media who are watching this live stream of the meeting. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to members of the public who have registered to speak at this meeting. Before I commence with the formal business on the agenda, I would like to cover some of the housekeeping issues for us to follow in order that the meeting is run in an efficient as possible way. Please do bear with us, as this is a very new to us all. For those participating in the meeting, if you could please only speak when invited to speak by myself, the chair. Keep your microphones on mute at all times unless invited to speak. Committee members, if you wish to speak, please type RTS in the chat function, and that will indicate to me that you wish to speak. Please bear in mind that all participants can see the messages in the chat function. Once invited to speak, please introduce yourself with your name and position, unless you have already introduced yourself earlier in the meeting. If I lose the connection, please note that Councillor Simon Wilson, the Vice Chair of this committee, will take over in my absence until connection is restored. Can we formally start on the agenda now, please? And can I have any apologies for absence?
Chairman, Councillor John Higgins has submitted his apologies.
And are there any substitute members?
There are no substitute members in attendance.
Okay, let's go to the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 27th of February 2020. I'm assuming that you've all read those minutes and have had sight of them and read them. Do we have anyone that will move those minutes, please?
Move them, Chair. David Boyes.
Thanks very much, Councillor Boyes. And do we have a seconder, please?
Second, Councillor Alan Bainbridge.
Okay, thanks very much. That's lovely. Councillor Bainbridge, thanks very much. Okay. Is there anyone wishes to bring any points up on the minutes? Any points of accuracy or inaccuracy? Okay, I declare those minutes correct. We now move on to declaration of interest. Does anyone want to declare any declaration of interest? Councillor Shield. Councillor Shield.
Are you on mute, Alan?
Yes, I'm unmuted. Yes, I need to declare personal but non-prejudicial interest in the third application as one of the local members.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Shield. Councillor Martin?
I'll declare an interest on item 5B as the local member.
Okay, thanks very much for that. That's lovely. Can we move on to the applications to be determined by the Area Planning Committee this morning? Can we first look at application DM/20/00404/FPA 83 Brecon Beds Close, Pelton. You all have the papers for that, and the papers page numbers are 9 to 18 on your pack. Can I now pass over to our planners for the presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I'm Fiona Clark, Principal Planning Officer from the Northern Area team. So I'll be taking you through the first application on the agenda today, which is an application for a two-storey extension at 83 Brecon Beds Close at Pelton. So the application this relates to is a semi-detached property within a residential area. You can see from the site plan, the property that we're looking at outlined in red there is next to a detached property directly adjacent. The property is going to be extended with a small extension to the side of the existing garage, with a two-storey extension being built over the garage. We can see from the slide here that the neighbouring property has been extended by virtue of a single-storey extension which wraps around the rear of the property. Moving on to the photographs here, we can see on the right of the slide the applicant's property with their single-storey garage. The proposed extension will be going above there. The slide on the right is looking down the side of the garage, and we can see in there the neighbouring window. That is a habitable room to that window, and we can see that that's set back about 5.5 metres from the front of the property. On the bottom picture here, we can see that there is quite a large bush which does sort of obstruct the view and some of the light to that neighbouring window. However, I do understand from conversations with people recently that that bush has recently been removed. Moving on to the site layout plans, I apologise for the quality of these. These haven't reproduced particularly well, but we can see the existing arrangement on the left and the proposed arrangement on the right. So we can see in terms of the proposed arrangement, the extension will go across the full width of the property. Moving on to the representations that we've received in association with the application, the Highways Officer has raised no objections to the application. We have received one letter of representation from a neighbour with regard to loss of light, sunlight, dominance, overshadowing, and the economic impacts of the proposed extension on that property. The application has been called to committee at the request of the local member so that you can consider those issues that have been raised, and the parish council have also expressed concerns, and both of those parties are here at the meeting today to take you through their concerns with regard to the proposal. In terms of the planning considerations, the most important policy to assess the application against is Chester Street Policy HP11, which relates to residential design. That policy is not fully consistent with the NPPF, so paragraph 11 of the NPPF is engaged. Regarding the character and appearance of the extension, the building line has already been established by the existing garage, and your officers feel that the extension is acceptable in design terms, being in keeping with the original dwelling and within the wider street scene. It should be noted that there are examples of this type of extension elsewhere within this residential estate. In assessing residential amenity, officers often use a guideline which is called the 45-degree rule. This is measured by taking a line at an angle of 45 degrees from the centre point of the window of the neighbouring property. If an extension cuts across that line, it's generally recognised that there will be a degree of loss of amenity to the neighbouring property. In this case, we can note that the existing garage already does cross that 45-degree rule. That was present when the neighbouring property built that extension, that single-storey extension. So the occupiers of that property would have been aware that that would have been an issue at the time. It is noted that the current property owner didn't live there when that extension was built. However, they would have been aware of the limited outlook and loss of light by virtue of the garage when they purchased their property. The extension would contribute to existing overshadowing and loss of light to a small degree, but officers don't feel as though it would be significantly worse than the existing present arrangement. The economic impact of the proposed extension cannot be taken into account in consideration of the application. So, in conclusion, your officers feel that the proposal would not have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the street scene or the host building. but we do recognise that there would be a minimal impact on the neighbouring property. However, given the extent of that impact, officers don't feel as though the application would be one which we would be looking to refuse, and we do feel that it is acceptable and complies with local plan policy and the NPPF. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Could I now bring in Mr. Stephen Hahn, please? I believe that you want to address the committee, Mr. Hahn.
Yeah, sorry, is that working now? Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you fine, thanks.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I've been asked to represent Pelton Parish Council on this one. I've got just a short statement here, if I can read that out on behalf of the council.
That would be fine.
It is in relation to this planning application. I'm acting in capacity on behalf of the Parish Council, as agreed at the meeting we held on the 26th of February, the last meeting we held before this lockdown thing. Pelton Parish Council was contacted by a resident who was concerned about the impact of this planning application before you today. The resident explained that if the application were to be approved, it would result in a two-storey extension being built at the side of the neighbouring property, which the resident felt would lead to a significant reduction in light on a room which is used as an office by the resident, the self-employed working from home. The office is its sole place of full-time work throughout the week. The Parish Council are concerned that the economic impact of this needs to be taken into account alongside the potential impact on the health and well-being of the resident if there was a greater reduction of natural light. Further concerns were raised about the proposals in that they would reduce the distance between the two detached properties. Pelton Parish Council considered the points raised and noted that the application form showed that no pre-planning advice had been sought by the applicant. In summary, Pelton Parish Council would like these matters to be considered by the Planning Committee before a decision is taken on this application. The property, I've stated the most telling piece of evidence I would suggest is that photograph taken at the front of the property where you're looking down the drive. I mean, the girl's home office is more or less obscured already as it happens. This towering, where this extension above is going to significantly reduce. I mean, the quirk of it is the way these buildings are. The houses are not actually perpendicular to the road; they're all on a slight angle. So any extension of the footprint of the building does have a greater than usual impact, I would suggest, on neighbouring properties. We would like you to be fully conversant with that fact as you're making your decisions. It would be a significant encroachment on this woman's property. Okay, that's me done. Do I mute it again now?
Yes, please, Mr. Hahn. Thanks very much for that. Can I ask, does Fiona, do you want to come back on that at this point, or would you rather wait? And legal, Claire, is there anything that you want to come in on at this point?
I'm happy to wait, Chair, until both the speakers have spoken. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Claire?
Thanks, Joe. Yes, I'm also happy to wait. Thank you.
That's fine. Thanks very much for that, both of you. Let's see. Now, we have Councillor Wood, who is the local county councillor for the area. Councillor Wood, would you now like to address the committee, please?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm speaking today in my capacity as a ward councillor for Pelton Division, and as members know, both myself and Pelton Parish Council had called in the application to be considered by the committee as a result of the potential implications on a nearby property. Unfortunately, due to their personal circumstances, the resident who will be most impacted by if this application is approved does not feel able to participate today, but will be referred to throughout my representations as being the resident of 81 Brackenbeds Close, Pelton, which is the property next door that was already referenced on the during the presentation. As a county councillor, this is the first time I felt the need to call in an application into committee that relates to an extension, and this is purely down to the unique issues presented in these circumstances. As mentioned by Councillor Hahn on behalf of the Parish Council, the major concerns of the resident of number 81 relate to the further reduction in natural light to their main place of work, and I ask that members take a moment to consider this. Over the last 3 months, many of us have been able to work from home, and I'm sure I'll be right in saying that all of our experience of this will have been very, very different depending on a number of factors, such as the size and layout of our houses and how many other occupants are around trying to get our attention. For many of us, there's some prospect of an eventual return to normality, but for the resident that's been impacted by this application, they will face a significant reduction in natural light to their single and permanent place of work. Paragraph 33 of the report on page 14 references a large bush to the front of the neighbouring property, and obviously the officers explained that would have also had an impact on the light, and I just wanted to confirm to members that this was removed some months after the resident moved into the property for this very reason. At several points in the planning officer's report, mention is made of the minimal impact of the first floor extension above the garage. Now, knowing the layout of the street and the proximity of these two properties, and as you saw on the slide with the 3 pictures on, I do not believe that the reduction in light would be minimal. At the moment, having spoken to the resident, even in late February, sunlight reaches the window over the current garage roof early morning, around 11ish, and that provides natural light. And even around these times, a lot of light reaches the wall of the neighbouring property and indirectly provides natural light to the window. And if the extension goes ahead, I believe that this would result in a significant loss of light from much earlier in the day to the window of what planning officers have agreed is a habitable room. And this is something that policy HP11, which was referred to earlier, in the local plan, and the MPPF are there to protect against. The planning officer in the planning officer's report, the council also referenced the new residential amenity standards policy, which I believe was sort of introduced last year but was adopted this year. And amongst other things, this does set out rules on property extensions. Section 2.1 of the residential amenity standards states a list of principles that will help to ensure a successful outcome. And one of those things on that list is that house extensions should be subordinate to the host dwelling. Section 2.1 of the residential amenity standards policy considers general design principles and clearly states, and this bit's a quote, "It's important that the amenity of adjacent properties are protected in relation to the overdominance, loss of privacy and loss of daylight of proposed extensions." The policy goes on to state in section 2.11 regarding side extensions to properties that they can be particularly visible in the street scene, they can have a significant impact upon the character of housing area. It is essential, therefore, that they are well designed to avoid having a negative impact on their surroundings. And section 1.2 states that the guidance provided in this document will be given significant weight when making decisions on householder planning applications. I would like to know why the significant weight offered under this policy isn't detailed in the report, which instead focuses on the separation distances between the properties, which the report argues would be allowable under the MPPF. For reference, the relevant parts of your planning report begin at paragraph 27 on page 13, which does acknowledge that the residential amenity standards SPD state normally side extension should remain subordinate to the original property through the setting back of the existing building line and incorporating a lower ridge line. However, the report argues that the exceptions can be made where the character and appearance of the area would have little impact on the street scene. The application would have a significant impact on the neighbouring property, which appears to heavily contradict section 2.1 of our own policy. A clear reoccurring principle contained in the document, which is the residential amenity standards document, is that any extension should be subordinate to the existing dwelling. The document goes on to show examples of proposed extensions that would be deemed to be good or bad under the policy, and given the proximity to the neighbouring property and the fact that the extension is not subordinate, I do not believe that this application would make it onto the good list. The report acknowledges that the planning officer's report acknowledges this in paragraph 31, which states the proposed extension would not conform with the requirements of the SDP, as it would extend to the existing building line to the front and side of the existing structure and would not provide a 1 metre separation from the boundary. Whilst I accept the officer's view on the separation between the properties, as the neighbouring property has also been extended in the past, I do not feel that the application shows that the first floor extension would be in any way subordinate to the original dwelling, as it lines up with the frontage of the existing property's first floor. The only justification provided for this in the report appears to be the existing building line has already been established. I ask members to consider why our established policy is not been followed in relation to this application when this principle has been applied over and over again in the past. Unlike the Chester Street Local Plan, the Residential Amenity Standards SDP has been recently adopted by this council this year. In the presentation, the officer made references to inconsistencies between the local plan and the NPPF, and as a result that the NPF should carry weight over policy HP11, but there was no reason given for not providing weight to the Residential Amenity Standards policy. I would suggest that to members that had the first floor extension above the garage been recessed further from the main building, perhaps back to the midpoint of the garage, that this would not only have fulfilled the requirements of the Residential Amenity Standards policy, but would also have resulted in a minimal reduction in light to the neighbouring property. And again, I'd ask you to sort of cast your minds back to the three pictures that you were showing on the slides during the presentation. However, it's not just the loss of light that is a problem, it's the knock-on impact that this will have on the residents' ability to work in that room, to run their business, to pay their mortgage and put food on the table for their family. Currently, the resident enjoys a light, airy, comfortable space from which to run their business, and it's difficult to believe that, particularly under the current circumstances, a local authority would want to take any action that could have a negative impact on one of our small businesses. And this is something our own policy is clearly intended to protect against. I'd like to thank members for their time this morning and would ask that they take these points into consideration before making a decision on this application. And in closing, I must emphasise that the window we are talking about here is not just that of a habitable room, but is also a permanent office space and place of work. Thank you for your time, Chair.
Thank you for your presentation or your views, Councillor Wood. Most interesting, and thanks very much. Can I just come across to Councillor Tucker? You have requested to speak, Councillor Tucker. It would be normal that you would come in when committee members were invited. Is that your request, or?
Chair, I just wanted to ask, I was unable to hear Mr. Hahn clearly. I wondered if is his statement available for us to view?
I can't answer that, but Mr. Hahn, is it available, or?
My computer skills, Danny's already laughing at you. My computer skills are not exactly wonderful. I'll tell you,
Okay,
I'm sorry,
okay.
I'm not a child of the 21st century. If there's a way of getting it to you in time, then I'll do it before the meeting. If it's possible, I'll try and get it to you. I can reread it though. If that would be a help to you, I'll reread it. Would that be a help?
You're actually breaking up, Mr. Hahn. I can't hear you clearly at all.
Is anybody else? Is anybody else?
That problem must be at your end.
Yes, I think it is, but
Yeah,
I couldn't hear clearly. So I got bits, but not all of it. So I wondered if it was available just so I could read it.
Mr. Hahn,
Yeah.
Would your skills enable you to send it via email, maybe to Danny? And Danny, would you feel happy to? Go on.
If Stephen can send it to me, I'll be more than happy to forward it on. And I'm sure if I can get that quite quickly, I'll be able to get that to Tanya quite quickly.
Right.
Is that an option, Mr. Hahn?
Yeah, I'll try. We'll try that now. Okay.
That's fine. Thanks very much for that. Okay, can I now pull Fiona in again, please, to make any comments she wishes to make?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points that have come up there. I think it's important to stress that the existing arrangement and layout of the properties does mean that the neighbour's window is already significantly impacted upon in terms of loss of light. And officers feel that this extension won't significantly affect that. It will be a little bit worse, but we're hard pushed to say that it would be significantly worse, and that certainly wouldn't justify refusal of the application. In terms of the SPD that Councillor Woods referred to, yes, that was introduced earlier this year, and that is something that we're taking into account in dealing with householder applications. But it's difficult to apply in all circumstances because all estates are different. In this particular arrangement, we've got a pair of semi-detached properties next to detached properties, one set slightly forward than the other. One's already been extended by the single-storey wraparound extension that we can see there. And they are slightly offset, which again brings in another complication to it. The extension isn't set down and set back as requested by the SPD. However, it is well designed. It blends in very well with the character of the street scene. There are others on the estate, and we feel that it would be difficult to refuse it in terms of design. In addition, if the extension were to be set back a metre, as suggested by the SPD, we feel that that would make very, very little difference in terms of the impact on that neighbouring window, and therefore we don't feel as though that would be beneficial or a reasonable request to make in terms of an amendment to the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Claire, is there anything you want to come in on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just before members go to debate, I just wanted to clarify an issue in relation to material planning considerations. So planning is obviously normally about focusing on protecting the public interest. And it is true, like set out in the report, that economic interests are not usually material planning considerations. But in this instance, the impacts arise from the overbearing and potential overshadowing and loss of light. So that's the basis upon which the material planning consideration arises. So it's for members really to assess the extent of the impacts from the development on this one. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. Okay, what I'll do now then, I'll open up the committee for debate. If you wish to speak, could you put RTS in the chat facility, please? Okay, Councillor Shield. You're on mute.
Chair, I think Councillor Martin had submitted on 9:34, well before me, a request to speak. Is that the case? No. Okay. Chair, could I ask?
Thank you for keeping me right.
All right. Chair, could I ask if there are any other properties where this has been an issue previously, i.e. has there been a precedent set somewhere else?
Yes, if I could just respond to that, Chair. The SPD is very new. It's only been introduced in the last few months, so it's not something that we have been working to. It is quite different from the policies that we were previously working to in the Chesley Street area. So we haven't, we've only just recently started applying it. And I think on this estate, there certainly aren't any extensions which will be comparable.
Could I just ask a question at this point in time, please, seeing there's nowhere else? What seems to have happened here is the neighbouring property, who are now objecting, actually built an extension, and the extension which was added is now an issue for the neighbours building their extension. I'm just struggling with that one. It looks as though by that initial extension, the single-storey office extension, that is where the problems are now arising. Would you like to comment on that, Fiona, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, that extension was actually built by a previous occupant of the property, we understand. So the current objector didn't live in it at that time when the extension was built. However, they would have been aware of the arrangement when they bought the property and the restricted light and outlook to that particular window when they bought the property and when they decided to use that room as a home office, because of the, as you say, that existing arrangement with very close proximity of the neighbour's garage and the layout of it does significantly restrict the light to that room. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Chair, could I just come in there, please?
Yes, please.
Obviously, that's all correct what Fiona's saying, but what we have to do is assess the impacts of the application before us in terms of what's existing currently, whether or not the extension predates it. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that advice. Can I pull in Councillor Tucker now, please? I think you're on mute, Councillor Tucker. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've got Mr. Hand's statement as well, so that's thank you, Danny. That's great. Fiona, could I have the diagrams, the pictures back up, please? If possible, I'd just like to see the.
Yes, you can. Just give me a
Yeah.
second. I'll get to it. Yeah, that's
I
not.
think there's a slight delay there.
Yeah, sorry.
Right, the PowerPoint's just opening now. If you just give me a second.
Mhm.
Was it the site photographs you wanted, Councillor?
Yeah, could you go back one, please?
Yeah.
To the So am I right in thinking that the red box is the property that wishes to be extended?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Right. So where in relation to that on that is the office? Is it this little jut out bit?
It is. Unfortunately, we haven't got the facility to be able to point things out on the slides like we do in the chamber. But you can see to the side of the property on the right-hand side, there is sort of a little bit that sort of sticks out, and that's where the window is. If I move on to the
picture,
photograph,
please. Yes,
we can see sort of on the top photograph here. We can see the applicant's garage where the extension will be going directly above.
Yes.
And sort of the bottom slide perhaps shows it a little bit better, the existing arrangement with that neighbouring window being set back, as does the right-hand side photograph.
Yeah, so what I was looking at is the first photograph. That tree's been taken out. It completely obscured the view, didn't it? You know, it seems to have done. If you looked straight out of that window previously, with that tree in place, it literally, you couldn't see anything. That tree's been removed to give better access and better light, hasn't it? Am I correct?
That tree has been removed, I understand, yes.
So has anyone looked at the light impact after that tree was removed? Has anybody actually done any measurements, looked at to give us a better view of whether that has improved the light to that existing property, or has it made no significant change?
Well, the concern that we've got to look at is whether the proposed extension is going to impact on that neighbouring window, regardless of that tree, whether it's there or not there. It's the extension that we're considering and whether that is going to adversely affect the amenity of the neighbouring resident.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to determine, Fiona. If there's been any updated measurements, you know, sort of determination of the impact of the sunlight on that property now, and if there's been any material change. What I'm trying to determine is there going to be an impact or is there not? And at the moment, I'm being told there is, but in my own mind, I'm not certain.
Well, officers are of the view that there isn't going to be significant impact due to the existing arrangement, because if we look at this, particularly the picture on the right-hand side of the screen there, we can see that almost the neighbour's window is almost in a tunnel, at the end of a tunnel, with high walls on both sides. So the amount of light that is going to reach that room is already going to be limited. And officers don't feel as though it's going to be significantly more restricted than it is currently.
Yeah, I can actually see the shadow. Thank you, Fiona.
Okay.
Can I pull in Councillor Bainbridge, please?
Thank you, Chair. One of the concerns I have is the distance between the two buildings. It should be kept at about 1 metre, I believe, and it's down to 0.3 of a metre. Is that a significant distance to have between the buildings?
Yeah, if I can just come back on that, Chair. That is set by the existing building line of the existing garage. So this wouldn't be one of the situations where we would say that the extension has to be inset, because that has already been set by the existing building line there.
Thank you, Fiona. Thanks very much, man.
Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this particular application, please? No? Do you want to come in with anything, Claire, from a legal perspective?
No, thank you, Chair.
That's fine. Thanks very much. Okay. It seems that everyone that's needed to have a say or ask any questions has asked. I'm assuming that that is correct. Therefore, what I will ask is, could we have someone to move this application? Either way, whichever you feel.
Councillor Boyes, I formally move the proposal.
Right, so Councillor Boyd moves proposal of acceptance. Do we have a seconder for that, please?
Councillor Bainbridge, I'll second that.
Councillor Bainbridge seconds that, and I'll hand over to Claire now, who is going to sort of take the vote there. Can I pass over to you on this one, Claire?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I just go through it alphabetically, Councillor Bainbridge.
Approve.
Councillor Bell.
Claire, Councillor Alan Bell has left the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Councillor Boyd.
I formally approve.
Sorry, Councillor Lynn Boyd.
For the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hopgood.
Approve.
Councillor Milburn.
Approved.
Councillor Martin.
Approved.
Councillor Robinson.
Approve.
Councillor Shield.
You're on mute, Alan. You're on mute.
Approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shuttleworth.
Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Approve.
Councillor Tucker.
Claire, I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Approve.
Chair, that is 11 in favour, 1 abstention, none against.
Well, thanks very much for that. Thank you, members of the committee. This application is approved. Thanks very much. What we will do now is we'll move on to the second application of the morning, and that is application DM/20/00830/FPA, and that is land at 27 Blind Lane, Chesley Street, and pages in your pack are pages 19 to 32. Just checking that that you can still hear the two objectors that are going to be speaking. Councillor Martin and Jackie Martin.
Yeah, I'm still here, can hear.
And Jackie Martin. Do we know if Jackie is still in the meeting?
Chair, Jackie Martin is still in the meeting. Jackie, if you can hear us, can you just unmute your microphone and just let us know, please? Chairman, can I just, before we continue further, can I just suggest that we suspend the meeting and try and get in contact with the objector before we resume proceedings, please?
Yes, I agree to that. Thanks very much.
I've now muted, and yes, I'm in the meeting.
That's fine. Thanks very much for that, Jackie. Thank you.
Ivan, if you can just bear with us 1 second, and we'll just get the we'll take it up for the broadcaster again. If everyone can just give us just some about 10 or 12 seconds. If I can just convey that to the broadcaster, we'll resume the meeting now, please.
Not a problem at all.
Right, we'll resume now. If you can just.
Okay, can I now pass over to Louisa Oliveira, please, who is our planner, who is going to give us the presentation for this next application, the new residential 3-bedroom detached bungalow with detached garage. Thanks very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Louisa Oliveira and I'm the planning officer for the Northern area, and I will be presenting 2 applications today in the areas of Chesley Street and Edchester. This first application is in Chesley Street, and it's an application for a new residential 3-bedroom detached bungalow with a detached garage on land at 27 Blind Lane, Chesley Street in North Lodge. These images show the site outlined in red. The site forms the side garden of 27 Blind Lane, a bungalow property. The site is located at the end of a cul-de-sac serving 7 properties. The site is bounded by residential properties to the west and open countryside to the east and north. South of the site is the A693 roadway, and the site falls within the Chesley Street settlement boundary, with services and schools located a short distance away. The site is located immediately adjacent to, but not within, the North Durham Greenbelt. So the first photograph here looks directly to the site from the streetscape, and you can make out the hammerhead turning area and the trees on the boundary with the main road. The second photo on the right-hand side is taken within the site and shows the gable elevation of the horse property with windows that overlook the site. The bottom left-hand photo is taken within the site, showing the land levels and the current garden use. And the bottom right-hand photo shows the general design of the dwellings on this street, which, as you can see, have a uniform design with a unique central link section and 2 wider and higher end sections. Image 1 shows the current site, with site as a garden. On the right-hand side image shows the proposed site with permission sought for a detached bungalow and a detached garage and a driveway adjacent to the boundary with garden areas to either side. As you can see from the elevations, this would be a simple traditional design of bungalow, built in brick with roof tiles to match the horse property. Turning to consultee and neighbour responses, the highways officer has no objections. Northumbrian Water have provided advice about sustainable drainage solutions. The trees officer recommends either that the garage be relocated or be built on raft or pile foundations to protect the trees. Neighbours have objected on the following grounds: the impacts to trees and the hedgerow, the concern over increasing parking on the street leading to obstructions and unsafe manoeuvres, that the design is not in keeping, and a lack of neighbour consultation. Turning to plan considerations and policy context, so the most important housing policy, HP 6, is out of date with the NPPF. Therefore, paragraph 11 is engaged. There are no policies in the framework that provide a clear reason for refusal. Looking at the locational sustainability, this is a moderately sustainable site close to public transport and the town centre. Looking at residential amenity, there are no significant impacts to neighbouring property, light, outlook or privacy, and an acceptable level of privacy and amenity would be afforded to the future residents. Looking at the impacts upon the character of the area, the exception to the uniform design of the estate is accepted given the end of cul-de-sac position and the historic permissions for identical design, and there is no harm to the visual amenity of the greenbelt. Turning to housing supply, the council are able to demonstrate an excess of 6-year supply, therefore no significant positive weight can be given. Looking at the economy, there are limited benefits to the construction sector. And tend to impacts to trees, the applicants have agreed to pile or raft foundations in line with the advice for the protection of trees. Turning to drainage, a condition can require sustainable drainage for the site. And in terms of highway safety, the level of parking and additional traffic is considered acceptable, and other issues raised are not within the remit of the planning authority. So to conclude, there are no adverse impacts. There are some limited benefits to housing supply and the economy, and paragraph 11 therefore directs the application to be supported. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Louisa. Can I now call on Councillor Martin, please, to address the meeting?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll just start off by thanking Louisa for the work she's put into preparing this report, and who has helped us and the residents with all the sort of queries along the way we've had with this application, along with the committee itself, who want to take time to consider this, who are taking the time to consider this application. The key reason I brought this to committee is at the request that the community have further scrutiny on this application. It's coming from a general lack of consultation they felt has occurred. Letters were sent out to residents, but only one of the households within that cul-de-sac, the household directly next door to this application, was sent one originally. The rest of the notifications were sent to households that sit beyond a line of trees, an A road, a grass bank, and then another road compared to the site. Properties that would barely notice an additional house popping up here. Although it is argued the council have fulfilled their statutory duty, it is disappointing that common sense has not been applied, and those living in the cul-de-sac most affected by this have felt left out. So, members, when you're judging the number of objections received in this application, remember actually that only one of these notifications letters went originally to a household that would be genuinely affected by the development, rather than the sort of 15 quoted. Yes, there is a principle of development on this site from previous applications. That would be okay when people are actually notified that such a development is happening, something that didn't occur in previous years. This has demonstrated that following the questions that we've asked has led to an additional condition being implemented, which hasn't been there in previous successful applications, the need to protect the trees that baffle sound coming off the A693 through foundations being pile raft already mentioned, which we really welcome. So members, when judging this, remember this is the first time objectors have had a real chance to raise their concerns. I'm going to leave Jackie Gregory, a resident within the cul-de-sac, to lay out the sort of negative consequences of this application for the community. But I just want to draw members' attention again to the unique design of houses that already lie within this cul-de-sac as per the photographs, compared to the design of the dwelling that is going to be proposed. They all look like this compared to the design of the proposed property. There's a reason why the builder who built these put 7 properties on this piece of land, so they are in equal proportions to each other and have the same look and feel about them. When you are considering this application, pay due regard to NPPF Section 12, Achieving Well-Designed Places. In particular, paragraph 127, where it states, decisions should ensure developments are sympathetic to local character and maintain a strong sense of place. Members, there are limited economic benefits. There is excess of 6-year supply of housing in the Chastity Street area. This is only one home. The question the committee needs to ask itself is the addition of this very different property. Will it be significantly detrimental to the look and feel of this community, outweighing any of the slim economic benefits that we get with it? Chair, my discussions with residents mean that I am no longer able to approach this application in an objective manner, and when requested by yourself, I will leave the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Martin. I suspect that you're staying in the meeting to hear Jackie's objection, and then you will leave after that.
Yes.
So, Jackie, can I pull you in now, please, to address the committee?
Yes. Can you hear me? Seeing as there's problems with
I can hear you fine. Thanks very much.
Okay, fine. My name is Jackie Gregory Martin, and I live at 23 Blind Lane. I'm the second property from this development. And let me start by saying I am not opposed to the principle of I understand there is a shortage of housing. What I'm against is inappropriate development. The proposed design is at odds with its neighbours, it's out of scale, out of proportion, and out of character. Space that we currently value and enjoy. And just as important, it will destroy our local environment. The original builder could only site 7 properties of the current design and scale. Given the limited amount of space, it had to include a single access road and established hedgerows. The area is already fully developed. Over time, the existing properties have been modernised, but the overall design, size and gardens have not changed. In the last 50 years, this cul-de-sac has developed its own unique identity, character and strong sense of place. It's a beautiful place to live, with just a few thoughtful, well-designed properties enhanced by attractive gardens. It promotes a good, healthy environment. It has a vibrant community spirit and everyone takes great pride in their gardens. Two have won awards in the local Chester's Best competition. The cram in one single build, completely at odds in design to its neighbours, is going to spoil the community character of the majority. Neither number 27 nor the build on the garden of number 27, the new build, will have a garden anywhere near the size of the other properties. Planning officer admits in report paragraph 57, the new design differs, it is both smaller and simpler. She is wrong to say it won't be noticed because it's at the end of a cul-de-sac. It will be noticed. She is also wrong to imply that it must be acceptable because it was never opposed. It was not opposed because nobody knew about it. The concrete over a garden space is bound to have a detrimental effect on the local biodiversity. The trees, hedgerows and lawns are an important feature. They provide homes for birds, owls, bats, insects and wildlife. They also form a barrier against noise and pollution. Now more than ever, we need to consider and respect climate change issues and carbon emissions. We need to preserve our valuable urban garden spaces, not build on them. I value my garden. Over the years, I've learned how to successfully grow vegetables, shrubs, fruit bushes and flowers. I treasure the large trees in my rear garden, and over the years have learned how important they are for the environment. County Council recognises this too, as these trees are subject to tree preservation orders. Currently, there's a hammerhead turning bay at the far end of the cul-de-sac, beyond number 27. This is a valuable asset. If the build goes ahead, this bay will be directly in front of the new property. Now, this is a design that architects tend to go away from because you have the dangers of reversing vehicles so close to the frontage of a house or build. And if this area is blocked, HGVs, the delivery ones, and the council collection vehicles would have no other option but to reverse all the way back onto the A693. With increasing traffic levels with the regeneration of North Durham and Drum Industrial Estate, this would prevent a very real danger both now and for the future. Just recently, there was a delivery vehicle had to do exactly that, and reverse onto the busy A693. I actually ended up personally stopping the traffic on Blind Lane so the driver could reverse out. So, to sum up my objections, 1, the design of the build will be different, out of character, out of scale, and out of proportion to the other properties. 2, it will destroy a garden. For a single build with a garage and a 3-vehicle driveway, we risk damaging the very thing we as a community should be striving to preserve. This can only have an adverse effect on the environment. And 3, there is a very real risk to highway safety through vehicles reversing onto a busy main road. The National Planning Policy Framework gives numerous justifications in refusing inappropriate development. Paragraph 70, inappropriate development of residential gardens. Paragraph 109, highway safety. Paragraph 127 says the development must A, add to the overall quality of the area. This won't. B, be visually attractive due to appropriate landscaping. It won't. Be sympathetic to local character. It won't. and must establish a strong sense of place. It won't. Paragraph 30 talks about designs that fails to improve the character of an area. And Planning Commission has already been refused once on this application back in October 1997. And in 2017, a fellow resident in the cul-de-sac inquired about the renovation design, and that was told it was deemed out of scale and out of character with the inquiry. It was refused. So decisions have been made about this area. So you have every justification to refuse this application, and that is it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Could I just ask the committee? I mean, I know that I suffered slight breakup in parts. I think I still got the understanding of it. The breakup wasn't so bad as I couldn't, but I don't know what other members have experienced. Could you do you have any questions that you'd like to ask the speakers, please?
Right. Chair, I think it wasn't too broken up. It was quite, you could get the gist of it.
Yeah, I realise that some of us have got the gist of it, but I think that Tanya, for instance, was suffering in the last application, and I just wondered, you know, if we're not all having the same experience. So I'm just wanting to know that members feel comfortable that they actually heard what was being said, or at least had a sound understanding of what was being said.
Chair, it's Tanya. I got every other word, unfortunately. It was very broken up. It was worse than Mr. Hahn for me. Am I able to read the statement? Is a copy available?
I wouldn't imagine it is right off. I would imagine we could do what we did with the last application. Although we sort of won't have sort of time, I don't think. But I don't know. Jackie, do you have a copy which you could maybe send?
Councillor Martin has a copy. I wonder if he could help.
He's looking very worried there.
Oh no, I'm probably just speaking. Yes, I do have a draft, the sort of newest draft of effectively what Jackie said. So yes. who wants a copy?
We know that Tanya would like a copy. Anyone else would like a copy? No. Does anyone want to ask the speakers any questions? Just for clarification, the speakers can't come back with extra points here. They would only be asking questions. If you have any questions of the speakers, could you type RTS, please, in? I'm not seeing any additional ones. So what we'll do now is we will hand over to the committee. Any questions, please, that you want to put, committee? We're unusually quiet on this one, eh? Councillor Boy.
Yes, Chair, thanks very much. Can I ask the officer just about the planning history on this, just in view of what the speakers just said, that there was an application refused when it says on the planning history there wasn't one refused. And could you just elaborate on the planning history, please, of this particular application?
Okay, so the report shows the 4 most recent applications. We don't always include the planning history going way back. So I understand that there may have been a refusal back in 1997. Obviously, planning policy has changed significantly since that time, and at that time, Chester Street local plan policy was against sort of development within gardens, and that development has to be in a brownfield site. But obviously, the NPPF now has more of a focus on development in sustainable locations. So that's why sort of the policy has changed since that time, and which is why we've resulted in 4 previous applications being approved on this site.
But can you just go through the years of the 4 that's the most recent, the planning history?
You can just bear with me 1 second. So in 2008, we had one approved for the erection of a detached bungalow and a detached garage. An extension of time to that plan permission was approved in 2011. We had a further application approved in 2014 for the erection of a detached bungalow and garage. And in 2017, a further application for a detached bungalow and detached garage, and that's just expired this month.
Okay, thank you.
It's been rather remiss of me, Louisa. I should have really asked if you wanted to come back on anything the two speakers had to say.
Just in relation to the consultation, obviously we can't really comment on what happened in the past with consultation and the past applications. She's raised that there has been issues there. But obviously we have undertaken statutory and further than statutory consultation on this application, and I hope that the residents now feel that they're given an appropriate chance to make their comments.
Thanks very much for that. Claire, do you want to come in on anything?
No, thank you, Chair.
That's fine. Thanks very much. So we'll go back to members again. Let's see who we have. Amanda, Councillor Hopgood.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was going to ask about the consultations, if I can, and I appreciate what you've just said. Out of the 15 letters of consultation that's gone out this time, you've had 5 letters of objection. Are those 5 letters of objection as a result of extending the consultation to the people in the cul-de-sac?
Yes, they are.
Right. Well, I think that probably is quite clear then that the last ones were approved because the consultation wasn't extended to the people who actually live in the cul-de-sac where the development's being built. You've said yourself that there's 4 applications gone through, and the resident who spoke said that in any of the previous consultations people didn't know about it because the people in the cul-de-sac weren't consulted. Did all of those applications go through under delegated authority, or did they go to committee?
I know certainly that the last 2 went through under delegated. Unfortunately, I don't have the access to the previous 2. I don't have the computer records at the moment. I'm unable to access them.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just come in here, Louisa, on that one? Because it is my understanding that what we do in these cases is we don't just send them to local residents, but we also post it on a lamppost nearby and everything. That would have been the case on this, is it? Or wouldn't it have been?
Not in this case. It didn't meet those requirements that it needed to be advertised in that way. Sometimes we do go beyond the sort of, the statutory requirements. But obviously with the timing of this, it was right at the beginning of the COVID lockdown, and we weren't able to go out on site at that point. And it didn't seem like an application where we needed to go beyond the statutory in this case.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Can I pull in Councillor Wilson, please?
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the highways that was mentioned within the objector statement about sort of safe access and egress onto the road there. Just to ask, has there been any issues raised with that by highways?
There hasn't been any issues raised, but if the highways officer is here, if he wants to come in and make any comments.
John, would you like to come in on that one, please?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members, everyone else. I'm John McGargill, the Highways Development Manager. We have looked at the location of the development. It's in a cul-de-sac of 7 units. With those 7 units, they all have 3 parking spaces. So they all have, there is lots of parking space in curtilage for each one of those units above the council's minimum requirements for the existing units. Together with that, there are 2 visitor parking laybys alongside the road, which can accommodate 4 vehicles. So again, there's lots of space for vehicles to park here. There is a turning head at the end of the cul-de-sac. Turning heads are there to provide for vehicles to turn. Obviously, if vehicles park in those turning heads, then clearly it causes a problem. And I think the problem that was referred to, Mrs. Martin referred to, in terms of a vehicle having to reverse out and onto Blind Lane. Of course, that will happen, and I think the description that did happen will have been because an existing resident or an existing residence visitor parked in the turning head. This new development provides 3 parking spaces, similar to all the other units in the cul-de-sac. So there is enough in curtilage parking space, and there's no reason for these residents to park in the cul-de-sac as there is any other resident to park in the cul-de-sac. The turning head in the cul-de-sac is a standard turning head, so a vehicle can turn within the turning head, provided there's not a vehicle parked in there. So I don't see any reason why these residents in the new development would have reason to park within the turning head when they have parking within their curtilage. Thank you, Chair.
And what it seems that the problem is actually an existing problem rather than an additional problem.
That's correct, Chair. That was what was described was an existing problem which must have been created by the existing residents or their visitors or whoever who has parked in the turning head. This development isn't necessarily going to make that any worse.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Is that all right with you, Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, that's spot on. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Can I pull in Councillor Tucker, please?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the access and egress to the property. If this planning application is approved, what is the access? It wasn't clear from the sides, at least I didn't see. Louisa, how do they get in and out of the new property? Is it by shared drive or is it going to be separate?
You're on mute, Louisa.
The access and egress is from the top of the hammerhead. I'll just put up the plan again to let you see.
Thank you.
Right, so apologies again, the plans haven't copied very well for this one either, but you can just make out the top of the hammerhead there, and the access goes straight off that. It's quite a long driveway, and so there should be space for 3 cars there, and then you have the garage as well at the end.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Is that okay with you, Tanya?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
That's fine, thanks very much. Councillor Bainbridge.
Thank you, Chair. It's just the design of the property. Is it a great difference to the existing properties, Louisa, or is it very similar?
Well, all the properties on this estate are bungalows, and they have a very standard and quite an unusual design where they have a lower sort of midsection and 2 higher sections. This new dwelling does not replicate that design. It's just a very small, simple bungalow design. But as it's not in amongst those dwellings, it's at the top. It won't be highly visible in the streetscape, and that's why we consider the design to be acceptable.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Thanks, Chair.
Very much. Okay, Councillor Milburn.
Chair, the question that's just been asked by Councillor Bainbridge was what I was going to ask.
That's fair enough. I mean, I kind of think that travelling that road on a semi-regular basis, there's quite a variety of sort of construction types on Blind Lane. Am I correct there, Louisa?
Yes, there is, Councillor.
That's fine. Thanks very much. Is there anyone else wishes to ask any questions? It would appear that what we've done is we've exhausted the questions. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for this application?
Ivan, I'll move that we approve the officer's recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Wilson, approve the recommendation.
Second that, please, Chair. Councillor Tucker.
Councillor Tucker seconds that. And can I now hand over to our legal rep in order to go through the vote? Claire, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bainbridge.
I approve.
Councillor Lynn Boyd,
Approve.
Councillor David Boys,
Approve.
Councillor Hopgood,
Approve.
Councillor Milburn,
Approve.
Councillor Robinson,
Approve.
Councillor Shield,
Approve.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
Claire, Councillor Shuttleworth has left the meeting.
Thank you, Michael. Councillor Thompson,
Approve.
Councillor Tucker,
Approve.
Councillor Wilson.
Approve.
Chair, that's unanimous approve.
Okay, thanks very much to the members of the committee for that. This application has been approved. Thanks very much. I think that we need to, do we need to wait now to get Councillor Martin back into the meeting?
Chair, I'm calling Councillor Martin back into the meeting now.
Thanks very much.
Chair, just to confirm, Councillor Martin is now back in the meeting.
Thanks very much. And so what we'll do is we'll move on to the third application to be looked into this morning. It is application DM/2/00219/VOC. It's 7 St Evers Way, Ebchester, pages 33 to 44 of your papers. Can I just check? We have on this application, we have Councillor Watt-Stelling registered to speak. Can I check that you are here and you can hear?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that. Thank you. So can I now hand over to our planner again, Louisa? I believe it's you again for your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. The second application is an application to vary the approved plans and access conditions of a planning permission, which was for conversion of Ebchester Church to a dwelling house, which was approved in 2015. The application is to regulise the works that have been done and to allow changes, including extending the driveway, creating a front seating area, alternative windows, an access ramp, moving the garage further from the rear wall, raising of the garage roof height and raising of the boundary wall height. So these slides show the application site, which is the former Ebchester Methodist Church at St Evers Way, Ebchester. The site is surrounded by residential properties to the north and south and further residential properties on higher ground to the east. St Evers Way roadway runs in front of the site. So the top 3 photos show the conversion works that have already been taken place, including earthworks to create the access driveway. The bottom photographs indicate the on-street parking along the streetscape on a typical weekday. Again, apologies for the quality of the plans, I haven't reproduced very well. This slide shows the changes between the plans approved under the 2015 approval and now being proposed. These include extending the driveway, creating a front seating area, providing alternative window arrangements, an access ramp, repositioning the garage further from the rear wall, and raising its roof height and raising the boundary wall height and installing electric gates. So turning to consultee and neighbour responses, the highways officer has no objections, provided that the widened access is constructed in accordance with the submitted plan. They consider the street is very lightly trafficked and a low-speed residential environment. There are no issues with the electric gate, provided that the gate does not open out towards the highway. And they consider the development should only be refused on highways grounds where there would be a significant, severe cumulative highways impact. Neighbours have objected on the following grounds: that the development is not in keeping with the area, that it has an overbearing impact on neighbours, that impacts to amenity from noise, disturbance and mess, the loss of roadside parking, which will increase parking elsewhere on the street and block access, the increase in traffic, and poor visibility for pedestrians and drivers. Turning to planning considerations in policy context, the principle of the development has been considered in detail under previous planning permissions and remains acceptable. The permission has been implemented through the commencement of construction work on the site. Therefore, it is only considered necessary to reappraise in detail those issues relevant to the changes. The most important housing policy, HO 17, is consistent with the NPPF. Therefore, the tilted balance test of paragraph 11 is not engaged, and consideration must be led by the development plan. Turning to design considerations, the amended design is considered acceptable on this plot, which differs from its surroundings. Turning to highway safety, the loss of on-street parking is replaced with in-curtilage parking. The development would not increase on-street parking or lead to dangers to pedestrians, drivers, or emergency access vehicles. In terms of residential amenity, there are no significant detrimental impacts to neighbouring light and outlook. Noise, dust and disturbance issues are best addressed under statutory nuisance legislation. So, to conclude, consideration of the development should be led by the development plan. The loss of 2 on-street parking spaces is not considered significant in terms of highway safety, as it would be replaced with 2 in curtilage, and all other highways issues are neutral. The design has been amended to ensure that the development will reflect the character of the area, and there will be no significant harm to residential amenity. The proposal is therefore considered to accord with the development plan and the NPPF, and paragraph 11 of the NPPF therefore directs the development to be approved without delay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Louisa. Can I now call upon Councillor Watt-Stelling to address the committee?
Thank you, Chairman, members. Thank you very much. Just a little history of this site. This project, this application of conversion from a Methodist chapel to a house, has unfortunately dragged on for 4 to 5 years and still not finished. And here we are now arguing for other conditions to be put on. My view would be to do the driveway and the front landscaping should have been done first a few years ago on this conservation. I have visited the site on many occasions and I have empathy with the local residents of Cohort Close and St Ebba's Way. The site is aesthetically not nice and it's been like that for some time. Now, to ask for a condition for driveway enlargement and others that was given by the planning officer in front of the dwelling will not be in keeping with this local vista. Chairman, can I ask the members, I would like this application to be refused and to get on with the first planning application. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members.
Thanks very much. Before I bring our planner back in, Ian Croft from Committee Services is going to read out a letter which has been received on this application. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. We've had a letter submitted from local residents and they've requested that this be read out to committee today. The letter starts by saying, we would like to thank the committee for allowing us the opportunity to submit a letter for their consideration today. Can we please ask the planning committee to consider the following points? Local plan policy states that conversions should respect the character of the existing building and locality. We disagree with the planning officer's conclusion that the change to the original plans meet this requirement. This plot housed a chapel, which although on a large plot, had lots of open landscape garden to the front and a small vestry building to the side, which blended in seamlessly with its neighbours. We feel the proposed changes will result in an overdeveloped site, producing a prominent and imposing build that stands out from its neighbouring properties. By extending the driveway to nearly 11 metres, the frontage will resemble a public car park and be totally out of character for the area. In our opinion, it will not visually attractive and sympathetic to the local area character and surrounding built environment. We are concerned that the Highways Officer's report has been compiled without a site visit and thorough evaluation of the road and its usage. We ask the committee to please consider that as residents, we have invaluable knowledge and experience of the usage of the road and the footpath that runs parallel to this conversion, as we use this facility on a daily basis. We are very worried about our safety should the proposed plans be approved. Cohort Close and St Ebba's Way alone has over 40 vehicles coming and going, in addition to visitors and service vehicles. Pedestrians use this footpath and road to walk to school, the shop, and access local amenities, and it is a very busy area. The road is already very difficult to negotiate without the additional hazard of an expansive driveway onto what has effectively become a single carriageway. A carriageway with extremely poor visibility at the junctions where Foss Way and Cohort Close join St Ebba's Way. Whilst the applicant has stated that there is a problem with safe parking, it should be noted that this was not the case prior to him purchasing the property. There cannot be any guarantee that the current on-street parking will be improved or made any safer by allowing the applicant to make the changes he is proposing. By agreeing these changes, the legal right to park on a considerable length of dropped curb will be given to one household, with absolutely no legal obligation that this area of dropped curb is kept clear of his vehicles, and therefore allowing a safe, clear and unobstructed view for and of other road users and pedestrians. We feel that the safety of our community should be the prime consideration, not the applicant's ability to park as many vehicles as he chooses, where he chooses. The applicant has numerous vehicles which cannot physically be accommodated off-road under the proposed changes. Thank you very much for listening to us. I do hope the members of the committee can appreciate just how passionate myself and fellow residents are about the situation we find our community in. We humbly implore you, please consider our heartfelt views when making your decision on this planning application. That's the end, Chairman.
Thanks very much for that, Ian. That's fine. Louisa, can I pull you in now, please? Any responses to the letter and the speakers, the points they make?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we are aware of the difficulties with this site, and it does have quite a bit of enforcement history as well as planning history. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a planning anomaly that we can't insist on completion of developments under planning policy guidance. Conditions have to be considered to be reasonable, and it wouldn't be considered to be reasonable to put a timescale on completion. I think that's particularly more relevant even now, particularly with the COVID that's ongoing at the moment position. In terms of sort of the design and the landscaping that would remain, because of the size of the plot, with it being a former church, more than half of the property frontage will remain for landscaping purposes. And we would draw your attention to the fact that as it was a church and not a dwelling, it's difficult for it to be in keeping already with the existing surroundings. Thank you, Chair.
That's fine. Thanks very much. I wonder if Highways would like to come in on their views on the points made in view of Highways.
Thank you, Chair. John McGargle, Highways Development Manager. I noted a number of points with regards to the letter, Chair, which I'd just like to address at the moment. The development does have permission, and was given permission in 2015 for a single parking in Kirtledge parking space and a double-length garage, so 3 spaces on the site for a 4-bedroom property. At that time in 2015, the garage counted as a parking space. The new development, the variation, improves the in-Kirtledge parking. It increases the in-Kirtledge parking by one vehicle. So it's actually looking to improve the in-Kirtledge parking space. Double driveway widths are normal. There's nothing exceptional. So so far as highways are concerned, having a double driveway width to park 2 vehicles is acceptable. The visual impact of that, we feel, wouldn't be great. It was suggested officers hadn't visited the site. As we know, there's been a long sort of enforcement history about construction of the site over the last 5 years. The council's neighbourhood protection manager has been involved, visited the site a number of times. The council's inspection and maintenance manager, highways inspection and maintenance manager, Paul Anderson, has visited the site, as has my highways development engineer, Dave Smith, and I've visited the site myself. So I'm aware of at least 4 different council officers on top of the planning officers who visited site and viewed specifically the issues with regards to parking in the area. with regards to safety, it was suggested that there's going to be an impact on safety. Well, the view is taken and shared by all 4 of those officers who I've just mentioned. It is a residential area where speeds are particularly low because of the layout of the highway. There is footway parking in the area, not just associated with this development, but within the rest of the development. Residents in the rest of the area do park on the footways in and around this area. So we didn't feel we could raise that as being a significant issue when it is an issue for other residents in the area. There's no issues with regards to visibility in and out of the driveway. Curbside parking was raised as an issue, but of course, if you remove the curbside parking, you put it in curtilage, that is a safer option than leaving vehicles parked alongside the curbside. So we think that's quite acceptable to build 2 in curtilage parking spaces. The legal right to park was mentioned. No one has a legal right to park. As we know, no one has a legal right to park on the highway. No one has a legal right to park outside their own home, or indeed outside anyone else's home. There is a requirement to keep driveways free of vehicles parked to prevent obstruction. You would be causing a legal obstruction if you park in front of someone's driveway. But in this instance, there's no reason why someone would do that. We're taking 2 vehicles off the road, which would be parked along that length of highway, and putting them off road. So we're not increasing the number of vehicles there. As I've said, the parking provision post-development increases the amount of in-curtilage parking, which from a highways perspective, we're not going to object to that. The fallback position to the 2015 permission is that we would end up with 1 less parking space. So from a highways point of view, it doesn't make sense for us to actually object to this development. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Could I just ask, while we're talking about that, I think there it was alluded to that it is busy. From my sort of knowledge of the area, that is a former social housing estate which wouldn't have any through traffic. So what are the movements, would you think, on that estate? Do you have any idea?
It was mentioned, Chair, that there was 40 vehicles going in and out the development. From a highways perspective, 40 vehicles spread over a 10-hour day is very low traffic movements. So we would consider they're very low indeed.
That's fine. Thanks very much for that, John. That's great. Can I now? Do you want to come in with anything, Louisa, or are you happy? Okay, thanks very much. I'll now open it to the committee, and I note that Councillor Shield has requested to speak. Councillor Shield. Councillor Shield.
Yes, I've just taken the unmute off. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, Chair, as one of the local members, I have been involved in quite a number of local issues. I've tried to take a peripheral view on some of these issues, specifically with regards to planning. But I need to raise 2 specific planning issues which have not been clarified by any of the officers. First of all, the application in 2015 stated that condition 3, planning condition 3, which was the access, had to be constructed in accordance with highways before the commencement of the development in the interests of highway safety. That was never done, and planning enforcement had to be involved, and therefore this has resulted in a new planning application. The reason that this was raised is that one of the residents asked for a copy of the application, and it was that particular resident who identified that condition 3 had been not discharged. The other issue that I've had with planning, and I do need to declare this information for clarity, is that in April 2020, we know that this application had been submitted, but work had actually started in the middle of the pandemic. It was necessary to contact a senior planning officer. He instructed the planning enforcement senior officer to attend and to give verbal instruction to cease any further work. And also Durham County Council Planning have served a planning contravention notice on the applicant in late April. Now, just for clarity's purposes, and I have visited the site at the weekend, this access has only one road in and one footpath in. The road is narrow, it's 5 meters wide. The footpath is 1.5 meters wide. So there's one way in and one way out. There are 40 properties with approximately 85 people living in that particular area who have to use that footpath. We have elderly people, we have young families, and they have to use that footpath and that road, but particularly the footpath, because that is the only direct access out. Now, I have read and reread the application several times, and I am seriously concerned about some of the aspects of the application. But I'd like to ask a couple of questions, first of all, before I make a further statement. Can I ask the planning officer, the application states that there is to be an 11-meter wooden cantilever gate which will operate electronically. Given that the 11 meters is almost 2/3 of the total width of the property, can somebody elaborate how this cantilever gate system is going to operate? Because the highways have stipulated it cannot open outwards onto the highway. So can somebody clarify specifically how this cantilever system will work? That's the first question, please. Second question is for the highways officer. You're absolutely right, John, in what you said, that if the drive had been constructed, it would have been a 2-vehicle drive plus a garage. That would have been 3 vehicles that would be able to be taken off the highway. If that had been done, we might not have had this application, and we might not be sitting here talking about this application, which is contentious at least. But I do have a view with regards to safe aspects. If you assume that at the end of the drop curb, you have high-sided vehicles which will obstruct the view of the cars within the curtilage of the drive, how can we ensure that the drivers can access, egress or enter that driveway safely? Also, there's going to be 11 meters of drop curb created. That 11 meters of drop curb means that access to the footpath is going to be at best restricted. At worst, there'll be no access past the applicant's property. The question I have to yourself and also the planning officer is, how will the residents safely enter or leave the estate using that sole footpath? As I said, I have looked at the planning balance and I have great difficulty in supporting this application. But as the local member, I'd like to hear the views of some of the other committee members before I make a motion on this application. Thank you for the time being, Chair.
Thank you. Louisa, would you like to come in first, please, and then John?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so in relation to the electric cantilever wooden gates, the applicants have submitted details of these. So these would be raised slightly off the ground. They have a central section, a pole, and the 2 sides would move side to side behind each other. So they wouldn't move to the side. I know on the west side there wouldn't be space for them to do that, so they would slide behind each other.
John?
Thank you, Chair. Certainly can't guarantee that any high-sided vehicle parked adjacent to a driveway will not obstruct visibility. But that is the case in every highway situation where there's a driveway. Any high-sided vehicle parked adjacent to a driveway will, to a certain extent, obstruct visibility for vehicles driving in and out of here. I've got no information to say that a high-sided vehicle will be parked in that situation. This development could be occupied by anyone in the future who may hold licenses for high-sided vehicles or not. So what we're considering is the application for the development itself rather than the users. I think the other question that Councillor Shield asked was with regards to how can we ensure safe use of the footway? Because the driveways are being provided, it will mean that vehicles won't need to park within the highway. What we see in St Ebbs Way and the rest of the development around there is vehicles parked partially on the footway and partially upon the carriageway to avoid blocking the carriageways. That's prevalent throughout the whole of the estate. If it helps, I can show members a street view of that sort of that parking taking place within the estate. I can't absolutely guarantee that the residents in this development will not park partially on the footway, but I can say that it's less likely to, because they will have more in curtilage parking space. Chair, would you like me to share the street view of the development?
I think that would be useful because I found it hard to visualise sort of which footway Councillor Shield was talking about.
Okay, Chair, I'll just share it now, and I'll walk through past the development if you don't mind, Chair.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm hoping members can see that.
Yeah, lovely. I can anyway.
Yeah, this is the development. St Ebbs Church, a former church, would have had parking demand associated with it at the time ceremonies, etc., took place, and there was no in curtilage parking. There will be in curtilage parking provided approximately this area here. Hopefully you can see that, Chair. As we head down St Ebbs Way, this street view shows that there's a number of vehicles parked. The black vehicle behind the green vehicles parked on the footway here. If we scroll around, we've got a vehicle parked on the footway here. A vehicle parked in front of a driveway which partly blocks the footway. So it is prevalent for residents to be parking in that sort of manner. At the other end of St Ebbs Way, we can see residents parking on footways. Residents do this because they don't want to obstruct the carriageway, but of course it obstructs for pedestrians. As I said, Chair, I cannot guarantee that any residents in this development will not park on the footway, but it's less likely because they've got in curtilage parking. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much for that, John. Thank you. From your expression, Councillor Shields, I think, did you wanted to come back on something that Louisa said?
I did, Chair. With regard to the cantilever, it's not my understanding that the whole 11 metres, because that's what we're talking about, on a cantilever, it'll either do that or it'll move completely, but there's not enough recess in the remaining property to allow that 11 metres. So if it just combines, that means that they will only have half the width, which is 5 metres, thereabouts, to enter into the extended curtilage. And I am not convinced that that is going to be successful. And John, with regards to the respect of parking, right, and also safety, I mentioned that there will be 11 metres of drop curb. When that 11 metres of drop curb has to be constructed, the footpath, the only footpath in and out of that property, and I'm not sure how many years ago that plan view was provided, because I can tell you I was down there the weekend, there was hardly a parking space available. But I'm not convinced that we can safeguard residents trying to access that property where their drop curbs will be constructed, because the footpath will have to be closed down or will have to be minimized. So the answer that you give was about parking, right, which I accept We have that all over the place, and every member will appreciate the difficulty that we all have. But we are adding to the danger by allowing this to happen. With regards to gaining access to that additional parking on the curtilage, the applicant will either have to drive in and back out, or he'll have to back in and drive out on a 5-metre road with only a 1.5 footpath. That means he has a 6.5 metre turning circle. He has 2 large high-sided vans. He has 2 large trailers. He has 4 cars. One of those is an extensive estate. I am fearful that we are going to have something happen very serious. How we haven't had an accident so far, because when we turn around and say, well, it's a housing estate and people drive respectfully, with all due respect, John, that's utopia. I'd love that to happen. In all of our areas, we have nothing but people using it as a rat run and people flying around. So for us to say, well, it's not well used and it'll drive very slowly, that is not happening anywhere to my knowledge. So, Chair, I know there's other members want to speak. I'm happy to listen to them, but I am going to move refusal on this application when I've heard the other members speak. Thank you, Chair.
Claire, could I maybe pull you in here from a legal perspective, because I kind of think we were drifting off planning in some aspects there. So have you anything to add from a legal perspective?
I don't think I've got anything to add, Chair, other than what kind of John McGargle's already said. I think he's covered off the legal perspective quite nicely. Obviously, highway safety seems to be a concern which can amount to a material planning consideration.
Mm-hmm. Thanks very much for that. Thank you. Do we have any other member who wishes to speak?
Yes, Chair.
Right, fair enough. Thanks very much. Well, sorry. Yeah. Councillor Tucker, if you can come in now, please.
Yes, please. Could I just ask if John would put back that street view for me, please? It relates to the question I have, and it would be helpful if I could see the access for this dropped curb and the curtilage.
Is that okay, Councillor?
It is. That's very helpful. So where is the access going to be? For this, I'm assuming that the dropped curb is going to lead to a driveway. Where is the driveway actually going? Is it going to be where that footpath is into the what was the church?
The driveway, Councillor, will be in this position here.
Right. And is that hedge remaining?
The hedge remains, yes, I believe so.
Could you go a little towards the left for me, please? How far is that hedge from that bend? Do we know?
I don't know, Councillor.
Right.
Can't say for definite, but it's
right.
Probably 20 to 25 metres from the bend.
Right, because my predominant concern is anybody pulling out where that big hedge is won't really be able to see clearly anybody coming round at speed on that bend. And I was just wondering what that length was. Would they have time to stop if there was somebody pulling out and couldn't see? I'm just wondering about sight line with that hedge.
Yeah, certainly, Councillor, there will be enough stopping distance, safe stopping distance. One can't imagine. Well, when we assess these things, we don't assess someone flying down here at 50 miles an hour. Clearly, you couldn't gain that sort of speed coming down here. The speed you're likely to travel around this bend and approaching the development is going to be 15 miles per hour or less. You may be accelerating away from the bend, but it's going to be 50 miles per hour or less. We can calculate and certainly know that there is enough safe stopping distance between the bend and where the driveway will be constructed.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Councillor Shield, I've got you requesting to speak again after Tanya on the list. Is that correct? Or
Not yet, Chair. I reserve the right to come back after I've heard other members speak.
No, it's just that you were next on the list. So, so next one I have on the list is Councillor Milburn.
Thank you, Chair. Right. First of all, can I just say that I have great sympathy for Alan on this one. I've got something very similar. Again, an old chapel in my ward. I'm very concerned by the fact that although there's going to be an 11-metre drive-in, there doesn't appear to be enough room at the front of those buildings to actually park. Is it, if all of that is going to be tarmac in the front of the building, and there's going to be cars parked on it, and they've taken away the little garage at the side, could you just show me where they're going to put the other garage? They're talking about moving a garage backwards, slightly further back, or slightly further forward. Could you just show me, please, Louisa, where that garage is going to go on the plan? Because I'm not sure I got that.
Right, so that current garage has already been demolished and it's going to be built in this part here. And I'll just take you to the plan. There you can see. And this is the extended driveway on the right-hand side, top right-hand side.
Got that. And the garage is going. So on the picture on the left-hand side, that is what it's going to look like. That is the garage. Oh, no, sorry, the right-hand side.
Right-hand side.
That's where the garage is going. So, in fact, you won't be able to go onto that driveway that they're going to construct and then drive round to any available parking at the back. That won't be able to happen because there's a garage there. I just do not see. I really can't, in my mind's eye, think how that is going to work. It's just there's not enough space there at the front. Right. Well, that's just my opinion. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, local residents were concerned about that, and I have been out on site and I've measured it with my tape measure. There was concerns about whether the plans were accurate, but I have been out, I've checked it all, and there is sufficient room for standard sort of driveway length and width.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, initially the question I'd like to ask is, do we have any sort of issues in the area which, you know, in terms of parking, is it that what that we're sort of going to exacerbate anything which is already there, or is it a case that this will create new problems? Would be sort of where I'm at. I fully understand it. I mean, I can see this because to me it looks as though coming in through one of the gates, you're only going to be able to enter it from one way. Am I right in thinking that if you come along? Which is, I mean, it's just, it does seem a very sort of tight and narrow sort of fit, if I'm honest. But just in terms of it, are there any sort, I mean, it was mentioned people parking on the paths. I know that's very common looking at the type of estate it is and the age of the estate, haven't seen them around County Durham. Sort of, is there already existing issues with parking, or is this going to actually create something?
So there are existing issues with parking, which has been recognised within the report. Unfortunately, given the age of the estate, many of the properties were built without in-curtilage parking or garages. So it is a bit of an issue on this estate, but that isn't unusual in sort of this kind of age of estate.
Can I just come in there, because I think that what Councillor Wilson was saying is, one, are there existing problems which you've suggested that there are? Will this make it worse or will it improve? In my mind, I'm saying if you put in additional parking off-road, then maybe that would improve the situation rather than make it worse. Is that correct or incorrect?
Yes, we would anticipate that it would improve the situation.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Can I bring in Councillor Hopgood now, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The problem I've got with this is the amount of enforcement work that's already being done. So we're looking at what they're applying for. I assume the retaining wall's always been there. So how did we not know about that at the first application, but now they need to move the garage forward? The slab with the foundation, surely they would have known that if there'd been due diligence done before the original application. But the biggest problem I have is that they haven't adhered to the original application, and we've had enforcement out that many times already. So to actually approve something else without them honouring the first application, I just find a bit incredible that we're looking at it.
Was that just an observation, Councillor Hopgood? Or?
Well, the observation was the retaining wall there originally? And if so, why hasn't it been? Why is it now a problem and it wasn't at the application stage?
Can you answer that, Louisa, please?
It wasn't recognised initially by the applicant that it was needed. Didn't really feel it was needed for this, but there has been sort of issues in terms of the neighbour at the back. I think a fence has fallen down, so he has agreed to this retaining wall to try and rectify the situation.
Okay. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I had a number of concerns, some of which have been answered. But one concern I've got and I would like answering is, how was this passed numbers-wise in the past? If all these changes had been made on the original application, do we think this would have been passed? Do you think
you able to answer that, Louisa?
This is a major change, and if this had been available at the time, these changes, it may have changed the decision.
Yeah. Can you answer that, Louisa, please?
Yes, I mean, obviously for this application, we're not reassessing principle. We've looked at the issues that do need reconsideration, design and highways issues, and we consider those to be acceptable. So we consider this to be acceptable. So therefore, if those, design and highways issues had been part of the original application, then we would have thought that they were acceptable at that point too.
Chair, could I just come in, please?
Who are you?
It's Claire Cuskin, the legal officer.
Yeah, I was going to bring you in. Thanks.
Yeah, obviously, thanks, Chair. We've got to determine the application before us. And I don't think kind of the determination of the previous application is particularly relevant in this instance. And also, I just wanted to make the point that the previous breach of the planning control, which have been alluded to, are not material in the determination of this application. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Claire. That was what I was going to ask. Now,
Chair, could I second Councillor Shields' motion for refusal, please? I wanted to add that.
Okay, yeah. Now, and I noticed that what we have Councillor Shield asking to come back in. Is that correct, Councillor Shield?
Yeah, there was nobody else speaking, but I see that Councillor David Boyes has registered to speak, so I'm more than happy to stand back and allow to hear what David Boyes says, please.
Okay, David, Councillor Boyd, can you come in now,
right,
please?
Yeah, Chair, just regards what Kevin said and what the legal officer said, just how much this is in variance to the original plan, and should it go to appeal, would we have grounds to sort of argue the case? If this is, as the legal officer says, we just look at this particular application in itself, but can we not sort of take into account how much there is a variance from the original application? Is that a material factor that we can take into account, just in case it does go to appeal?
Who would like to answer that one?
Chair, could I come in, please? Claire Cuskin.
Yes, certainly.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, you certainly can take into account changes insofar as you have to assess whether what's being proposed is acceptable. So if you arrive at the conclusion that it's not acceptable, for example, from design point of view, from highways perspective, residential amenity perspective, then certainly that can be used as a reason for refusal. We haven't had a full reason yet. I think Councillor Shield will probably elaborate shortly in respect of what his reasons are likely to be for recommending refusal of the application. But following that, I'll be able to advise as to the likelihood of the grounds being kind of successful or otherwise at appeal. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Claire. Alan, Councillor Shield, we've got Councillor Tucker and Councillor Martin who are wanting to come in. Is it okay to bring them in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's lovely. So, Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Chair. I'm listening to the debate, and I still have serious reservations about the safety of the access to this curtilaged driveway behind a high hedge, in the middle of a road that has two quite bendy ends on them. If you look at you come down a sharp bend into the site and you exit on a sharp bend at the other end. So there's two quite substantial bends on either side of this site. And I'm really concerned about these electronic gates. I just cannot see how they will operate safely to allow vehicles in and out in a safe and proper manner. I have some really material highway safety issues with this, and I would like to sort of have some assurances, I think, is what I'm looking for on the element of safety. And the other point I would like to make is this is a substantial change from the original application, and I'm not in favour of approving it at this point in time, Chair.
Can I just say that sort of what we have had is we've had the highways officers sort of point of view, and you know, I think that he is probably more expert at that than probably we are. So I think we need to take that into consideration. But what I want to do now is anyone want to come in on what Tanya has said?
Chair, just in terms of the electronic gates, you know, I understand that there are concerns about how they will operate. If the members were minded to approve the application, we could add additional condition on in relation to how these will operate. We'll try and we could get some details in to be approved for that. Thank you, Chair.
So you would add that as a condition?
Yes.
Okay, thanks very much. Can I bring Councillor Martin in, please?
Thanks, Chair. I really appreciate the concerns about this in highways. That it is a narrow road that's outside there as well. But what I'm hearing is a lot of what ifs, and I've not yet heard the sort of material planning reason. We need to remember that we need to look at this application as it is right now, not what has been presented before us, rather than what has happened before, past what could happen, etc., etc. There's a lot of what ifs. At the minute, I'm not minded to sort of support the reason for refusal, and I'm really hoping that Councillor Councillor Shield is going to have a real substantive reason to do this, or else I won't be able to support it, and I don't want, you know, I do not wish to cost my community money in dealing with the appeal in this.
Thanks very much, Councillor Martin. Do you want to come back in now, Alan? Councillor Shield?
Chair, unless anybody else would like to speak, yes. I will clarify my concerns again. And this is on the planning balance and the reason that I cannot support this application. It's on two aspects. First of all, I believe that this application breaches GDP 1 and policy HO17. The reason for that is that the development does not reflect the character of the existing building, and being sympathetic to local character and the surrounding built environment. It does not ensure the protection of the open land with amenity value neither does it respect residential privacy and amenity, and it will seriously affect the amenity of neighbouring occupiers. And in my view, it's also in breach of paragraph 127 of the NPPF. But also, and probably more important, I think this breaches policy TR2 of the Derwentshire Save Local Plan, and also paragraph 11 of the NPPF. As has been mentioned, this is a 5-metre width road. It's not a standard width 7.5-metre road. It's quite narrow. The width of all vehicles at the moment is at least 2+ metres. That leaves a passing way of 3 metres. We have heard that the electronic gates will have a centre post, which means that will restrict the access and egress of the extended curtilage by half the distance. We know that the applicant has very large vehicles, high-sided vans, a very large estate car, and 2 exceptionally long trailers. Paragraph 108 of the NPPF requires a safe and suitable access for all users, and I've had no clarity at all when I've expressed serious concern that when the drop curbs have to go in, the footpath would have to be closed. Let me say again, that is the only footpath in and out of the estate with nearly 40 properties. It also, paragraph 109 of the NPPF, is that the development should be refused if there's an unacceptable impact on highway safety. And in my view, as a local member, and remember what we've heard so much from committees, we always listen to local members. They know their areas, they know the issues, they know their people. Well, you've already heard from Councillor Stelling, and I'm imploring the people on this committee to listen to the residents who have written a very passionate and a very emotional letter asking for this application to be refused, and on the grounds which I've given. So it is breach of GDP 1, HO17, paragraph 127 of the NPPF, policy TR2 of the Derwentshire Save Local Plan, and paragraph 11 of the NPPF. The proposal would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The benefits to who? Who would gain from this? Not the community, solely this particular individual, who may not choose to park his 5 vehicles, because that's what it would be, 1 in the garage, 2 in the drive, 2 in the extended curtilage. He has 8 vehicles at the moment. There's no guarantee he's going to use that. He could have an open vista looking across the valley. So I am moving that motion. What I would also ask, if there are members of the committee who have a counter proposal and want to approve the application, can I please ask you to review the comments on paragraph 54. We have had 4 years of issues in this particular area with this particular applicant, and to say that we're not going to put any conditions for work commencing and leaving it to statutory nuisance, because that's nothing more than a time-consuming bureaucratic nightmare for all the neighbours to fill in timesheets. So if there is a motion to approve the application, I would request that standard time-limited conditions are duly applied. But I hope the committee members, who I have a lot of time for, they've listened very intently to my knowledge and Councillor Stelling's knowledge, to share what we know about this area and support the refusal of this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. What I intend to do is give, I think, Claire, legal, and maybe Louisa too, time to consider what you're putting down as the reasons why. But in the meantime, I noticed that Councillor Bainbridge and Councillor Martin have requested to speak. And after they have spoken, I'm not sure, but did John from Highways put his hand up there?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, if I can just, if I could speak, please. Thanks.
Yeah. Right, are you going to speak now then, John? Or?
Okay, Chair. Yeah, I just have a little bit of concern about what's been expressed by Councillor Shield. The highways leading past this development are standard residential width roads. It's not narrower than any other. A residential width road is 4.8 metres wide. What we're saying is this is 5 metres wide, so it's not narrower in any way than a standard residential road. The width of a vehicle is standard. A standard vehicle is 1.8 metres. What we do take into account is access for fire tenders. Fire tenders can be up to 2.5 metres wide. There would be enough width by narrowing down the road to allow the drop curb, the 11-metre length of drop curb, to be constructed and to construct a barrier or some sort of bollards, plastic bollards, to allow vehicles to step outside into the carriageway past where the drop curb works are taking place. Those drop curb works would take place over a day. The Highway Authority would undertake those works and ensure that that was a safe area in which to operate and do those works. The applicant would need to apply to the Highway Authority for a licence under the Highways Act, the Section 184 licence. So I have no concerns about actually being able to construct a drop curb at that location and ensuring the Highway Authority will ensure the safety of any pedestrians travelling through there. I did hear about the horizontal alignment of the carriageway from Councillor Tucker, which leads either side of the development. Having a bend either side of the development could actually be seen as being beneficial in terms of keeping speeds right down when they're passing this development, rather than being negative in any way. I'd have real serious concerns, Chair, that we wouldn't be able to defend an objection if the objection was based on highway safety. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much for that. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring in Councillor Bainbridge, then Councillor Martin, and then I think I will sort of end debate, pull in probably Claire from legal, Louisa if it's areas that she can cover, and then we will move on and put this particular one to the vote, I think. So, Councillor Bainbridge.
Thank you, Chair. We were asked to look at the variation on this planning application. Is the original planning application, does it have a driveway? Does it have a drop curb, etc.? Because if we're complaining about this one, why wasn't it complained about in the original application?
I think that John was nodding his head there. John, do you want to come in?
Yes, certainly, Chair. As I alluded to earlier, this application had a single driveway for a four-bedroom property with a double-length garage. That would have required a single driveway drop curb over approximately 5 metres.
Okay, is that all right for you, Councillor Bainbridge?
So we're just looking at it more or less an extended drop curb for a double driveway instead of the single driveway.
That's correct, Councillor Bainbridge, that's correct.
Okay, can I...
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bainbridge. Can I bring in Councillor Martin, please?
Yeah, I was concerned about the comments about the sort of the footpath closing and everything like that, because about getting past it. But can someone just confirm? I'm looking at Google Maps here, and I'm seeing that there is a footpath that goes round the back of the property that links Foss Way and Cohort Close. Is that a genuine footpath that people can use during things that go wrong for that?
Councillor Shield, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah. There is a passageway which leads to a garage site at the back of Cohort Close. It's not fully paved all the way around. When you come to the garage site, it's an earthen garage site with about 6-7 garages there, which aren't accessible particularly well. But there isn't a proper footpath around there. You could walk over it, and then you could get onto the public highway at the top of Cohort Close. So there's one direct footpath and one rear partial footpath, if you want to use that comparison.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, can I bring you in, Claire, and then I'll ask if Louisa has anything to say, unless you would think it would be better to do it the other way around.
No, Chair, I'm happy to come in now. Thank you. I mean, I've listened to what Councillor Shields' reasons for proposed reasons for refusal are. I have to say I'm much more comfortable with the proposed reasons for refusal which relate to character of the local area, residential amenity in terms of GBP1, HO17 and paragraph 127 of the MPPF. Having heard what our Highways Officer John McGargles has to say, I do think we would find it very difficult on appeal to sustain a Highways reason for refusal. However, that is an issue for members to afford appropriate ways to take that into account in the determination of the application.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Claire. Louisa, do you want to say anything or not?
Yeah, I would second what Claire says, and I'd just like to sort of say as well that obviously the permission would lie with the land, not the person, so we shouldn't really be taking into account the number of vehicles that a person might have. He might not live there forever, it could be somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I found that was interesting, that what we were doing is I've never been in a meeting before where we have looked at what number of vehicles anyone has had. I can see where Councillor Shield is coming from and the issues that might cause, but I wondered whether we could sort of use that as a consideration in deciding on this application. Can I just ask, has everyone had their say on this particular application, please? Okay, I think that we've discussed long and hard. So what we have at the present time is we have a nomination by Councillor Shield, and if you can remind me, was it Councillor
Thompson
who seconded that one, and that was suggesting that we reject this application. Are there any more nominations?
Chair, could I say one other thing? I did say that if the committee are minded to approve the application, that additional work-related, time-dependent conditions are applied. Given that we've had 4 years worth of issues in that particular area, the relationship between the applicant and the community has broken down. It's probably irreparable. But basically, I'm asking for normal standard working arrangements, part-time on a Saturday, no working on Sunday, restricted time on an evening. The last thing we'd need is for further aggravation within this community. But I hope that the committee members will be supportive of my motion to refuse the application. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I come in, Chair?
Okay.
Can I make a proposal based on Councillor Shields, what he's just said conditions would be on that particular application? I'm very, very mindful of the fact what the legal officer said, that if this went to appeal, we wouldn't have the grounds to be able to defend it based on what the Highways officer said and what the legal officer said. I don't think we can take into account how many particular vehicles this particular person's got, but I am very, very sympathetic that the planning contravention, they've been riding roughshod over it over the last 4 years. So I would fully support what Councillor Shields' conditions would be if we minded to approve this, and I would move approval based on those conditions.
Right. So what we've got is Councillor Boyd's counter proposal of accepting with conditions. Do we have a seconder for that, please?
I'll second that. Councillor Bainbridge.
Councillor Bainbridge is seconding that proposal. Okay. So that Claire, help me out here. Where do we go with this one now? Do we vote on Councillor Shields' proposal first, or Councillor Boyd's? Hello. Hello.
Claire, are you able to provide some legal advice, please?
Claire's coming back in, I think. Did you hear that, Claire?
Sorry, I've had some difficulties just for the last 10 seconds or so.
That's okay. Well, what we have is Councillor Shields' proposal that it is rejected, which has been seconded. And then we have a counter proposal for acceptance with the conditions by Councillor Boyd, which has also been seconded. Which order do we take this in?
I think we normally take it in the order of the first one first.
Okay, so we're going to vote on the non-acceptance of this application. Okay, so we've got the proposer and the seconder. Claire, could you go through now? Claire is going to ask you whether you agree or disagree with the refusal. So over to you,
Thank
Claire.
you, Chair. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you, yeah.
So this is for refusal of the application on the grounds put forward by Councillor Shield. Councillor Bainbridge?
Disagree.
Councillor David Boys?
I disagree.
Councillor Hopgood?
Agree.
Councillor Milburn?
Sorry, agree.
Councillor Martin?
Disagree.
Councillor Robinson?
Disagree.
Councillor Shield?
You were muted, Alan.
Yes, sorry, I agree.
Councillor Thompson?
Agree.
Councillor Tucker?
Agree.
Councillor Wilson?
Disagree.
I have that as 5-5. Can I just take that again, just to be sure, please?
No, it is 5-5.
Councillor Bainbridge, are you for or against the motion?
Against.
Councillor David Boys?
Against.
Councillor Hopgood?
For.
Councillor Milburn?
Councillor Milburn.
Sorry, for.
Councillor Martin?
Against.
Councillor Robinson?
Against.
Councillor Shield?
For.
Councillor Thompson?
For.
Councillor Tucker?
For.
Councillor Wilson?
Against.
5-5. Chair, do you wish to exercise your casting vote?
Yes, I will I will cast mine, and I will go with the disagree.
Okay. That motion fails.
Okay, so we now move on to the second one, where it is for approval. Would you like to go through the process again, Claire, please?
Certainly, Chair. Councillor Bainbridge, are you for or against the motion to approve the application?
For.
Councillor Boys?
Just before I do, just to clarify that has got the conditions that we mentioned.
Yes, your resolution was to include certain conditions, which I think, if you're happy, will be agreed by the planning officers in consultation with the chair and vice chair.
Okay, well, I'm for the approval.
You're for. Councillor Hopgood?
Chair, I would want those conditions to be in consultation with the ward members because they know the area better. No disrespect to the chair and vice chair, but the whole point is we want to avoid the neighbourhood disputes and the working conditions. And if we just go with the set rules, especially given that the government have extended them for planning, I don't think that's acceptable.
I would agree entirely with Amanda there, especially as it's been Councillor Shield who's actually come up with the conditions. I would certainly support at least Councillor Shield or both Councillor Shield and Watchdale to be a part of the consultation.
I wouldn't see any problem with that.
Okay. Are you
In
happy
that
to
case,
continue
I'm
the vote?
for.
You're for, Councillor Hopgood. Sorry, Councillor Hopgood, could you confirm you're on mute?
Sorry, yes, I'm for that with those conditions attached.
Thank you. Milburn? Councillor Milburn, you're on mute.
I am, yeah, sorry. Yes, I agree with the conditions.
Councillor Martin?
For.
Councillor Robinson?
For with the conditions.
Councillor Shield?
Against.
Councillor Thompson?
Against.
Councillor Tucker,
Against.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
That's 7-3 in favour, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. So this application has been approved. So can I say thanks very much to all concerned. It's been a little bit of a long one and a little bit sort of an awkward one. And so I thank you for your patience and perseverance. I haven't been, and the next item of business is any other business, and I have not been notified of any other business. Therefore, before we close the meeting, I'd like to thank everyone for taking part. For those members of the public and media who have been watching this meeting, that concludes the business for today. Thank you. And can I remind you, if you just stay in front of your screen,